Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod big show for you today. Got a really important guest, Mick Byrne. You've probably heard of him as All Blacks assistant coach, you might not have, but here's a guy who's one of the great innovators in our game. From an Aussie rules background, comes into rugby and changes a whole bunch of stuff across the world in Leinster, then with the All Blacks in Australia. He is now the head coach of the Fijian Drua, so we'll be having a chat with him about skills, about rugby, about how the Drua are going. Plenty to talk to with Mick Byrne. Remember, he's a guy who coached Dan Carter how to pass and Richie McCaw how to tackle. So he's a guy who knows a few things about a few things. We'll talk with him. The Chiefs, the loss there. What does that mean? The loss to the Reds. We'll get into a bit of that. Are the Brumbies now and with a chance of being top qualifier? The Crusaders shut down the Blues. A bit of analysis on that. And what about Leicester firing Anuku? Man, him and Caleb Clark. I think Caleb didn't come out on top of that, Chipper.
No, I don't think he would feel he did either. Leicester was, immense. And Caleb still had his moments, but I suppose the kick out of the full in the second half was probably one he'd like to take back.
Totally. James Parsons, by the way. Former All Blacks hooker. So, Chipper, before we get on to Mick Byrne in a few minutes' time, let's get into some of the rugby on the weekend, most notably the Chiefs versus the Reds. Obviously, we know that a lot of top players were arrested. Retallick, Kane, Weber, Taukei'aho, lots of top players were arrested. But you've got to give some credit to the Reds' defence. They were very staunch. Yeah,
especially, I suppose, towards the end there, when they did give away advantages. And I was surprised that the Chiefs probably didn't take the advantage rather than trying to push, because he had shown all night that the advantage wasn't going to last forever, whether it was a penalty or knock-on, so it was always going to end if they kept going. And I felt like they were starting to get the momentum back and should have backed themselves probably in Golden Point, but wasn't to be. And I don't think it's a bad thing. This is going to sound ridiculous to most people, probably to Chiefs fans, is sometimes this will just sharpen the focus at a really important time of the year. It'd been going all perfectly. And we've seen teams in the past, they go on these big win streaks and then they, drop the final or a semi-final or whatever. So I think this will be great for that next tier of player that got opportunities, and also just for the guys that probably, as Roger Randall said at half-time, tried to play the game on their own. So I don't think it's all bad, and I think it's great for the comp, because it puts the Reds right back in the mixer now for finals footy.
I think you're talking about the held up right at the end, aren't you? About how they had a couple of advantages and really they had the chance. So let's say that you're the captain and you're on the field and that advantage is happening and you got the chance to get over the line like Thompson did. As a captain, how do you go and make the call, hey guys, let's take the advantage?
Oh, I think you've got to trust your game drivers. So it wouldn't be, but I mean, previous times or experience you hear captains yell out, just knock it on, or to take the three. But the Chiefs just aren't that side. They've won games by doing what they did. So it's not surprising they did it. I'm just thinking if they're ever in that situation again, Damien's been pretty accurate off the tee, and I would back them against most teams to go deep into that sort of Golden Point.
So should Chiefs fans be worried about this glitch?
I personally, if I was a Chiefs fan, I'd be thinking it's a great timing. You'd rather them have this, slip up by giving guys opportunity that haven't had as many runs on the clock, but also you don't want to do this against the Hurricanes, coming up or the Brumbies, because there's a psychological aspect to it. Maybe the only downside to the loss is they potentially could have sent another team to have that pressure and opportunity in Canberra, but I think they're going to have to send the two big dog squads for the next 2 weeks in particular.
Oh, well, that's it. They've got to run home against the Hurricanes, the Brumbies away and the Force away. So it's actually not an easy run home. And while they've got a buffer of 5 points at the top of the table, there's a good chance that could come back.
Yeah, well, I think if they win this weekend and get the result, they can send guys to Perth, other squad members that potentially aren't on tour. So they are still a little bit in control of how they go into that final series. But it's now they need to win, not they can have that one loss maybe against the Brumbies in Canberra.
Dude, the YouTube comments section lit up something terrible, didn't it? We didn't give the Chiefs enough love last week.
Yeah.
We've been giving them love for 10 weeks, then they slip up, and here we are again talking about them.
Well, it was hard. It's
Apologies.
hard. I feel that, for Chiefs fans, maybe we didn't last week, but there's not much more you could say. They had their blueprint and they were just running red hot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know you won't want to single anyone out, but if we use, I suppose, Frank Lamani as an example, I remember when you guys were playing the Brumbies last season in Canberra. It was quite hot, afternoon game. You defended for a long period of time in your own 22, and then you eventually got the breakdown turnover, and Frank Lamani takes the quick tap right under his sticks. The forward pack's probably gas because they've defended a number of phases. And then he gets turned over and the Brumbies eventually score from that turnover, versus Frank Lamani this year, who's manipulating defences, making great decisions when to use the quick tap and when to just settle things down. I mean, his growth in a year in this side, from the outside looking in, he has been exceptional.
You're right, mate, and I think, we've had a chat about that, and I know, none of us like singling out players, but if you're going to talk about that one, I've had some good chats to him about that. And, I think this year he's realising, as a great player, in a Fijian team, that everyone else is working hard as well. And he doesn't have to do it off his own bat anymore. Like he's there, he's got 14 mates out on the field that'll come and help him and do his stuff. And he's taking a lot of, probably a lot of patience now, because he knows that the game's going to get played and will exit, and then he gets his chance. And also understanding, chatting to Frank about it and all our players, understanding that the way the game is played these days, we only ever play 60% of the game the way we train for, and the other 40% is making stuff up as we go, because it's our line out, or it might be an opposition line out, it's overthrown, and suddenly our hooker at the back of the line out's got the ball and going into contact on his own. We haven't practiced that. So what are we going to do for those next couple of phases? We just play. And that's the time to just play, because their defence is not set. They're not folding around the corner because they weren't prepared for that. If they thought they were on attack. So we get probably 2, maybe three rucks if we can get a bit of a line break where we can just play. That's the time to play our style. That's the time to play the game that we play. If it's our line out and we win it, that's not the time to start throwing stuff around and because the defence is set. They're going to come around the corner, they're going to gang up on us, and they'll be right. But so we're just learning how to really control that 60% of the game, and then the other 40%, mate. I would not even try and tell our boys how to play that 40%. Just let them go. They cut their teeth on that as kids. So when that ball gets turned over, boys, you just play. Probably the thing that we've got to get better at is, because we are so excitable when we do get that turnover, is to hang on to it for maybe 1 or 2 rucks, to set it up and go from there, rather than trying to score off that turnover.
I suppose a big part of the enjoyment of the game, you don't want to take that away. You've got to allow that freedom. You've got to allow that essence of Fijian rugby to go. If you over-structured it, you'd run into issues.
Yeah, and that's the key. I think for me, last year was probably trying to get some structure into them. And it was frustrating when we didn't get it. But when you watch them play, there's stuff that they do that, you wouldn't want them to stop doing. But I think you alluded to it before with the story about our turnover under our posts. Where are we doing it and when are we doing it? We get better at that, we'll be able to marry the 2 parts of the game together.
There must be some freakish things you see at training that you must just blow your mind, and as a skills coach particularly, just really enjoy.
Yeah, every day there's something going on. I think the thing that's probably blown my mind the most is the physical nature of the way they hit each other at training. And, for me being a pakeha, like at the end of the day, if someone hit me like that at training, I probably want to get up and pop him on the nose. But they get up and pat each other on the back. It's a great hit. That's just what they expect. So I think that's probably been the biggest eye-opener. There's no such thing as 60% or shoulders on. We just go at it. And they respect each other for getting hit, and that's something. But yeah, certainly from a skills perspective, there's some things you'll do and they'll just go end to end on a try, and you're just like, well, that's just something special there. And we've seen a bit of it. I think probably the disappointing thing for me was the try we scored against the Blues that was called back on a forward pass. And we got the apology on Monday saying, look, sorry, it wasn't a forward pass. We'll be better than that next time. But that was the try of the year for me. That try we scored there, and that's the tries we can score. But, and then you sort of get the apology on the Monday from the ref saying, look, sorry, we got the call wrong. It wasn't a forward pass, which has probably robbed the team of the try of the year. But when you see that sort of stuff, you see that quite a lot at training, and you're just like, wow, how'd they do that?
Who wins the World Cup, Mick?
Oh, straight off the bat. Look, I really like, I know the ABs have had a lot of issues, and I know I'm very biased, but I just think they can bring a game that can upset the way the game's being played at the moment. I think there's a lot of teams up north. France are doing a hell of a lot of good stuff. Ireland are attritionally strong. They get across the game line. They don't give you many chances to turn over the ball and play that loose game against them. They're really well structured. But I think the ABs, they can combine both those, but they do need their forwards functioning in a really physical game.
Before we let you go, Mick, I had one question from a viewer wanting to know, if you think about all the forwards and the backs that you've coached, which 3 forwards do you think would make good backs, and which 3 backs have got the skills to make good forwards?
Okay. Well, I think if I look back and say what forwards have I coached that have ended up in the backs, I remember Victor Vito finished up on the wing in a World Cup game, and he didn't look out of place there at all. So, I think of all the players I've coached, he's done it. I mean, there's probably others. You look at guys now like Aotearoa and these guys. You could probably slip them out somewhere out wide, and they'd hold their own. I think there's a Wallaby guy, Radiki Samo. He didn't do a bad job either when he went out there. And I think, any one of our back row could go and play on the wing at the moment. So we're just teaching them how to be back rowers, but they could do that. Backs to forwards, it's pretty hard to go past the bus. I wouldn't mind seeing him picking the ball up at the back of a scrum. His brother does a pretty good job, but I think it'd be good to see him. Geordie Barrett, I think, could be a good number 6. I wouldn't mind, he runs hard, he goes hard, he's, could be a good kicking 6. Reminds me similar of a guy I coached at Edinburgh who cross-coded to Aussie rules, Mike Pike. He was a fullback winger at Canada Rugby, played at Edinburgh, ended up playing over 100 games with the Swans and won a premiership with them. And I reckon, of the players, Samu Karevi could go to 7. He could hold his own over the ball, and pretty physical sort of guy. So, but when you look back over my time, if I had time, I could probably sit down and rattle off a team of backs that could play forwards and a team of forwards that could play backs.
We'd hold you to that if we had another 15 minutes. Maybe we'll let you go to your coaching.